Welcome to Veronica Live, and I'm here with my wingman, John Salick is here today. And then we have a regular family Veronica Live member, Representative Griff Griiffitts from our Bay County area here in the Panhandle of Florida. Welcome back, Representative Griiffitts.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. Appreciate what y'all are doing.
Well, we have a lot to chat with you about because I have been beat up. I'm a baby Xer with over 5 million views now. And I've been fighting for Amendment 3, that we don't support having pot in Florida. And then Amendment 4 when it comes to abortion. And so I wanted to start with our laundry list of amendments. John and I did a special little show going through all the amendments just to see what you think is going to happen here in November, because you were the first one. You came on the last time you came on. You mentioned that pot was going to be on the ballot, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And it's a citizen-driven, bill, and then I guess.
Kind of.
Well, yes, corporate greed
with a huge corporate. Influx of money behind it, right?
Right. And then I've been so upset because Senator Joe Gruder, who's also been our former chairman, and he's our national committee man to be of Florida, has come out
and
supporting
Joe's
it.
A great guy.
I love him normally.
I was a little surprised. Yeah, Joe is a fantastic senator and a great friend, actually, and has always been a big supporter of mine and mine of his, and we just have a different opinion on this, and it's fine. I was a little surprised with that, but to be honest with you, as soon as he did it, a friend of mine in Tallahassee said, "You watch, Trump will endorse pot in like a week," and sure enough, he came out and did it. And so that was all very, I'm sure, very strategic within the state, leadership roles to say, okay, look, let's kind of trickle this out with some of these local and state, elected officials to show that people are in favor of it. And then the future president steps up and says, yeah, he's in support of it.
Well, I have to say,
I just didn't think I didn't think the optics looked good with him, and the CEO of True Leave, and her dumping $74 million into this.
Yeah. It's it's the Walmart of weed, right? It's the money they're dumping into it. There's clearly an incentive if they're dumping that much money into this. Now, while I think the medical marijuana initiative took a couple of times to pass in Florida. 60% is a big threshold, and so this maybe it doesn't pass. Maybe there's enough people who have enough concerns and questions to say, not now, or maybe not ever. We're a very conservative state, but we have a ton of new people that have moved to even our part of the world, and so. I just don't know how it's going to go. All the polls are showing it's very, very close. And, we'll see. Maybe the conservative nature of Florida will make this something that they won't have to address.
Well, can't you just, as a legislature, I'm hoping it doesn't pass, but then you come together and just handle it. What I put on X was, let's just fine the hell out of people. And that way they don't end up in jail and our coffers get full. So is that not something that you can move forward? Yes.
Yeah, there's the decriminalization argument's been on the table for many years, and that's possible to do something like. I think the president put something out. Future president put something out yesterday. It's like let's not penalize these people with little amounts of marijuana and all this kind of stuff. And there's some sense to that. We don't need to overcrowd our jails when we have true criminals on the street. And these guys are not really hurting anybody but themselves, hopefully. But it's a very our society is changing ever so fast. I think we've seen it in our lifetimes, more than most. And it's there's a decay of moral society. I think you see that all over social media and the TV and that sort of thing. And this is just the evolution of it. And Florida's Constitution has been very easy to amend in the past. And this is one of those opportunities where if you dump enough money behind it and you get enough petitions validated and you really go after probably a younger demographic, then you're going to probably get invalidated and get this put on the ballot, and it might fail. If it fails, we'll see it again. I mean, it's not going away.
I said I couldn't believe that Joe Gruters would support a Nikki Fried little agenda talking point. So I was so upset because I love Joe Gruters, and
Congressman Gates has kind of always been on the side of this as well.
Oh, and I love him. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a chat.
Yeah, he's always been kind of on the side of, and I wouldn't say he's pro marijuana. He's just kind of a limited government, leave me alone kind of person, and which I agree with that as well. But this is something that I think it would be, as you talked about, find the heck out of stuff. If it were to pass, some of the language in the constitutional amendment says, nothing prohibits the legislature from enacting laws that are consistent with the amendment, right? And what that means is, I feel like I'm obviously not a lawyer or a constitutional expert at any level, but what I do feel like is that we can have the ability to, which is so crazy to hear from a Republican, is to regulate some of this stuff. This is the one time, right?
Okay.
This is the one time you do want, like a sin tax. We did it with cigarettes. We do it with booze. We do those things.
Representative Griffitts, is that when you drive around our county, how many of these little medical weed, businesses have popped up?
Popping up everywhere.
People are getting weed. They're getting weed. So,
they don't have, that's the issue. That's exactly right. If you want it, go to the medical doctor or whatever. He'll give it to you. You can go to the dispensary. You can get it. It's fine. Go about it the right way. But if it's just legal and it's all over if it's sold in gas stations and all that, then I think we've got bigger issues. I think we're going to have to really worry about turning into kind of you just see these pictures of these blue cities and states.
Yeah, I've been to Seattle multiple times, and they're shooting up in front of you. And that's the thing. People have been arguing, on X. I've been beat up so much. And then we've had Dr. Rachel Ethered, what's her name? Ethered, I don't know, whatever her last name is. But Dr. Rachel wrote a book called The Soros Agenda. And it was all about Soros is pushing marijuana in every state as a gateway drug because we're all zombies. But anyways, if it passes, I hope you all work on the language a little bit.
I would think you would see. I'm hoping you would see. It would be the first pro-tax Republican legislature probably to really put a heavy tax on it, and then to treat it. Put some treatment and educational component with the funds that are raised. While at the same time, if we're going to tax the snot out of it, let's dedicate a big pile of it towards public education and get the educational component in Florida the best in the country. If we're going to have it, let's capitalize on it, I guess. And then make sure that it's not sold near, like we do with liquor stores, 1,000 feet from schools, churches, playgrounds, things like that, to try to make it where it's not. I think if you've been to Seattle or if you've been to New Orleans or wherever, you walk on the streets, you just smell it everywhere.
No, I was in Vegas the weekend. It became legal, Griff, for my birthday with a fancy convertible car that my husband rented and smelled it the entire trip.
Say contact the whole trip.
It was, as a retired military officer, I was mortified. Go ahead, John.
Do you think there's any potential to, one of the things I'm concerned about is the potency of this stuff. This is not the marijuana from when I was,
we've had the experts on. It's not the old day marijuana.
And I don't know if you can do.
That's why I like the medical stuff now. That it's very regulated. It's vertical integration, obviously, but there is some regulatory people that follow it. If it's just a blank slate and everybody can just go to do what they want to do, there's no telling what can happen. And I just don't. I'm not comfortable with that at all. And I'm hopeful that the voters in the state will do the same. We don't want to mess up our good Florida.
No.
So do you think if it passes, I know John Morgan is really pushing to get all the marijuana convictions out, get everybody that's in jail turned out that has a marijuana conviction.
That's a great question. I don't know. He's got a big mouth and a lot of money behind it. But I don't know that you could just say, okay, the new law is passed, let's just open the gates and let all these offenders out. I don't know how that would work. I'm sure there'll be some discussion at some level about that.
Okay. Next amendment is Amendment 4. And again, that was citizen initiated. It says on this from the James Madison, legalizes abortion before fetal viability or when deemed necessary for health of the mother. In Florida, you can get an abortion up to 6 weeks. So what was the driving factor of this? Again, I've been so attacked fighting this, and Christina Peshwa, she's like one of the number one, fighters fighting for babies. And then James Uther,
press secretary. Yeah.
And then James, the other one.
Extreme push. Yeah. Upmeyer. This has been an extreme, I would say, focus for the Republican legislators out of Tallahassee. We discussed it in great detail before we left Tallahassee, and then we've had Zoom meetings with all the electeds around the state to take initiatives to try to raise money to defeat this. This is if you look at the two amendments, here's just a great example. The two amendments, 3 and 4, side by side, that are probably the most controversial. If you look at the difference, Amendment 4 is like a paragraph, right? Mm-hmm. It's very vague, very, very vague, very much open to interpretation, which we as conservatives think is a bad deal. Like that, if you look at Amendment 3, the pot legislation or the pot amendment, it's got a lot of descriptions and definitions. It's several pages long. This one is left, Amendment 4 is done deliberately that way for these, these pro-choice folks, I guess, that are just, I don't know. I'm a pro-life conservative. I just don't understand it at all. I wish we could ban them outright all around the country. And, now that we have states' rights, I guess that's a great thing. I think we learned during COVID that states' rights are very, very important. So hopefully our voters will once again step up to the plate and say that, we have to speak for the unborn, and the ones that don't have a voice, and get rid of this just absolute horrific constitutional amendment. Why this would be in the Constitution is crazy to me.
Well, I'm so shocked because you got it down to 6 weeks. We were leading the way, and then again Trump stepped in it. I love Trump, but he stepped in it again. And I was
it's playing to the middle. It's trying to buy those. The independent voter, even in our county, the independents are growing daily. They just register as independents, and so I think he's trying to placate to those folks to try to earn that suburban mom vote, maybe. Which at the end of the day, I just think is you just got to stand up for principle on this. This is not about there are some things we can all sit down if you're on the opposite side of the table, and we can probably kind of try to figure out if there's a happy medium. Well, I don't believe there is in this. Like, there's just not. And you're either for abortion or you're not. And it's just a sad state of affairs that we have to put it in the voters' hands when we know that there's so much fraud that happens in South Florida and around the country with voting fraud. I think that we've seen it, and it's become more and more glaring. We do a better job than most in our county here. We do probably one of the best in the state, if not the best. But those blue counties, we'll name them as Broward, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade. Those are all problems.
Well, I wanted
so Griff, how much leeway, if something like that was to pass, they say, decision with the person and their healthcare provider. As a legislature, when you actually write the law, how much leeway do you have in saying, well, by the way, a healthcare provider is a doctor or this kind of specific kind of doctor as opposed to a nurse or whatever?
I think that's the concern is there's so much gray area with this amendment. It's very vague, and that's why it was done intentionally that way so that it just opens the door to all kinds of craziness. I just think it's insane. But once again, we're going to let the voters decide this, and hopefully that 60% threshold's hard. Let's hope we don't reach it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about the Democrats is they always try to operate on the emotional appeal, and we try to fight back with facts, and that is the hardest way to convince somebody that's operating on an emotional level. But they're not listening to the facts, and they don't care about the facts.
They don't care about the facts. It's all about, like you say, John, it's lead with your heart instead of your head. And, maybe in some cases that's okay, but not in this one. And it's a challenge that when we passed the 6-week, ban in Tallahassee, we listened to all the arguments. We, through debate and everything, and experts testified and all that. And, look, you can listen to all that and make your vote. But I think the Republicans in Tallahassee exercised a strong opinion by laying down what we did, and hopefully it'll stay that way.
So what was it like in the room? Was everybody clapping when you got to 6 weeks? I mean, that was pretty much a miracle in a way, as much as I want zero.
Yeah, the rep that ran it out of Lee County, Rep Persons Mullica, she's an attorney out of South Florida. She was actually pregnant on the floor while she was arguing.
Whoa.
So it was pretty emotional. And she has now, a little, I guess he's about an 18-month-old little boy or something now. But it's, you put somebody on the floor like that, he's got a vested argument. And she actually just went in front of the Lee County Commission and asked the commission down there to take a stand on Amendment 4. And I think they kind of passed a resolution down there for her to just kind of make a stand locally down there that they're opposing it as well.
Nice. Well, we've got serious stuff to talk about, but I thought this amendment was very funny. So we got to get some fun in here. Amendment 2, hunting and fishing enshrines a right to hunt. Enshrines a right to hunt and fish in the state constitution. And I live on the water. And last night at 9:00, my neighbor's dock are all of these high school boys fishing, and I said, only in Florida. This is so cute. I thought it was adorable. And then you have an amendment too, Griff. What is that?
Once again, it's pretty easy. Once again, easy to. This one was done.
Have
I
a
think
happy
by joint
one.
resolution. Yeah, I think this one was done by joint resolution in the House and the Senate, where I think it's just kind of codifying the fact to fish and hunt in Florida. I'm not sure if it's really ever needed. I think there's just been a huge initiative. If you remember, after the first of the year, the governor came out and discounted fishing and hunting license like 50%, I think, for 90 days or something. So he's trying to push people outside, make sure.
Well, it was it's a happy amendment. So that one should
you watch
issues.
That one will. Listen, you watch. You wait till the votes are counted. That happy amendment, I bet, has less votes cast for it than the other two. People would gosh.
Okay,
that's a North Florida. Yeah, it's a North Florida amendment, probably.
I know, it's adorable.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I wanted to ask you and I read the PR on it, the Great Outdoor Initiative, and I guess the governor is really wanting. I mean, is the narrative right? He wants to make these parks into golf courses. I saw CFO Petronas said no. And then I was shocked. I was telling John before we started this conversation with you today, I just couldn't believe how much money and jobs we have 175 parks in Florida, 30 million visitors, I think it's 3.6 billion impact, and 50,000 jobs. I'm like, I guess I was naive. I thought everybody worked at Disney World. So, tell us.
Yeah. we got a lot of state parks. I mean, you got to think that just here we have two, that anchor our beaches with Camp Helen and St. Andrews. And so we're blessed. But the conversations popped up before in the past. And usually what happens is I think there's somebody at a table that says, well, how do we monetize our state parks better? How do we, get them the most bang for their buck or whatever. And as opposed to being pragmatic and probably thinking about it through over the course of a few days, if you want to invest in our state parks by making the roads better and the campsites better, and you want to, which I will say clearly is, if you want to train the staff and give them some hospitality training by using Visit Florida, things like that. If you want to build rustic cabins that kind of fit with the style of the park that you're in, I'm fine with all that. If you want to build golf courses and condos, that's where we have to stop. That's where the line is drawn. The state parks are such a jewel, but at the same time, we have tons of issues where those state park employees sometimes they treat it like it's a nature preserve, and they don't want people to come even to visit them. Our state park here, we get tons of concerns through our office about little things, whether it's like, for instance, there's a recreational pass that you can buy. If Veronica, you said, I'm going to go buy a Kimney family pass, and you go down there and you buy the pass. This used to be the case. Thankfully we've got the 6, but while you were out of town, if you were gone, if your husband or your daughter or whatever took the pass and went out there, they wouldn't let them in if you were not there, because their name was not on the pass, even though it said Kimney family. It was like, what are you doing? And then, for instance, when Hurricane Debbie made landfall, just 3 weeks ago, our state park shut the doors on Sunday. We were not under a warning. We were not under a watch.
Oh, really?
They kicked all the campers out of the park on Sunday.
Oh my gosh!
And they shut it down to everyone, even 24-hour pass holders. And I called and talked to folks in Tallahassee. I'm like, why is our state park closed? Well, we got to be prepared, blah, 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 whatever. I understand that. Well, then on Monday, they had a sign up on Monday that said they were going to be closed on Monday and Tuesday. And I called and I said, I said, do you know how many businesses in Panama City or Bay County are closed today because of the hurricane? They said, how many? I said, 1. It's the Florida State Park. It's the only one that's closed.
You're the bouncer for the park, Griff.
Yeah. And so, thankfully, St. Andrews in the last 6 or 8 months, they're redoing all the roads. They redid a lot of infrastructure after the storm. They've invested in it, but it is 20 years past due. I mean, at one point, St. Andrews was one of the most visited state parks in the whole state, and we're still, I think, top 5. But my gosh, capitalize on that. I mean, make it a showcase. And part of the conversation, they said, well, we want to make the parks more accessible. Well, then quit charging. Just open the doors and let people come in for free if you want them more accessible. But they don't want to do that. It's about monetizing the operation, making it better than it is. But at the same time, man, you got to have some common sense. Those state parks are a jewel.
Well, that's the thing is it's a public good, and it's not a profit making, right? It's not profit. It's not development. And I'm trying to figure out how anybody in their right mind in Tallahassee would even broach putting a golf course or a hotel development in a park. I mean, and has anybody been fired over this? I mean, I'm really curious.
There's a whistleblower. Yeah, there's a guy that got fired, but he's the whistleblower.
Right, the whistleblower got fired. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, that's our next guest.
I think I really think it was just kind of one of those throwing spaghetti against the walls kind of thing, and it kind of got leaked out to the Sierra Club and 1,000 Friends of Florida and all that, and it just really blew up in their face. I really don't think that at the end of the day, I don't believe the governor or his team would have put something forward like that without really going behind the scenes and navigating the pitfalls and the traps that might happen, because that was clearly a misstep. Even throwing that spaghetti against the wall. I mean, it was overwhelming support. I mean, I don't know of a single elected in Tallahassee that was in favor of it. I talked to a bunch, and I don't know of anybody that was like, yeah, it's a great idea.
Well, the first notice I got was from Don Gates, and who's running for Senate, and he was like, this is crazy, and then Jimmy weighed in, and I'm like,
Jimmy, Jay, we all very quickly, we were all like, this is crazy. This is nonsense. And very quickly, talking to folks in Tallahassee, they were like, hey, this got leaked out and it's just taking a life of its own. We're trying to just, damage control now. Like, damage control is easy. Come out and say, this is a bad idea. We're against it.
So, Florida now, I've got a bunch of friends that are realtors, and all of the condos are having to be inspected after Surfside, which I love, but for safety. Yeah. But a lot of the condo owners are now trying to get rid of them because they're not going to be able to pay these assessments. And is there anything? I mean, I don't like to give away free money, but going forward, hopefully we'll have everything so this never happens again. But trying to help, Floridians. Is there anything the legislature can do? And I don't even own a condo, but I'm asking because, I know people and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to pay $60,000, and not everybody has like $100K, $60K, $25K laying around. But we do have to think safety.
John Spelak money, right?
Hey, I got my assessment on my farm, and it doubled in 1 year. I was so outraged.
Hey, Bidenomics, baby.
Bidenomics, baby. There you go. No, it's a real issue. This is that unintended consequence, right? This was that, like you say, a product of Surfside, which obviously there needed to be something to happen to kind of regulate these condos. We have, even in our world, the condos on the beach are all kind of hitting that 20, 25, 30-year threshold. The newer ones are, some of the older ones have been there for decades. But it's, there was a good intention, obviously, but we really don't want, I've gotten emails and letters and read all the stuff from folks in South Florida who are, hey, I'm a retired school teacher from wherever, and I moved to South Florida, and I bought my $300,000 condo, and I'm living my life, and now I'm having to go back to Walmart to work because I had to go to the bank and borrow $40,000 for a special assessment to do all these things. That's bad. That's not, I don't believe it all. And this all happened, I guess, in 22, right before I arrived up there. This was not the intent of the legislature. It really wasn't. It was really to try to make sure these bad HOAs, and there are some bad acting HOAs around the state who've just never paid attention to their property. They've robbed their finances of the reserves to take care of the property, and now it's all catching up. The governor's been very vocal about it. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, he spoke about it yesterday, but the Senate president kind of sent out a memo a few weeks ago kind of saying, look, I sympathize, but I have no appetite for a special session. And that means that we won't even talk about it until March or April of next year.
Oh, my.
And, and so this could be a little bit of a sticky subject for the next year or so until we get up there and hammer this out. Now, I do believe that when we get up there, this conversation will be talked about a lot. I just don't know what the solutions are. Those folks in South Florida that have they're like Representative Vicky Lopez, who is like, I think she's 117, Representative 117. She nothing but condos. Like her entire district is like 10 city blocks in Miami, all high-rise condos. That's it. So that's her world. She hears it day in and day out, where most of our condos are vacation rentals and the secondary home market, and those people get mad and either pay it or sell it, and we don't hear about it as much in my world as they do in South Florida or in the Orlando area, Tampa area. But it's going to be something that's got to be addressed.
Do you think it's a case of overreaction? And it's typical of government. When you have a disaster, nobody wants a disaster on their resume. Okay, I understand that part. But usually the reaction is so overwhelmingly, let's err on the side of safety, and we don't really care what the costs are. Let's just, make it super safe so that nothing ever happens. And, we'll address the 0.1% probability that this could happen. And, if it costs $10 million, then so be it, to get that 0.1% of 1%. There's a practical line that, you need to establish as far as risk assessment goes. And do you think that's part of the problem?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's been neglected for years. And that's part of the issue, is why it was brought to the forefront after Surfside. I just think that you have a huge group of folks in South Florida that weren't paying attention. I mean, we have buildings here that have been condemned locally. They've made the news. Lake Town Wharf's got some issues. Dunes of Panama has got some issues with construction. Those are older buildings. And if they're not maintained, they can become a problem. They could really become a life and, safety issue. And so the fire department and structural engineers and all that are going to be code enforcement from the city and county. They're going to be out paying attention to these buildings, especially if they get complaints. That's usually how it starts, is you have somebody an owner or a tenant who calls and says, hey, there's, stucco chipping off the walls or the stairs or something's going on. And then you go out to investigate the complaint and you realize, we got bigger issues. And then that's when you get the HOA involved, and they've got to get structural engineer involved, and you got to file reports. But you know what? I understand it. We want our buildings safe. We don't want anybody living in high rises that aren't safe. But at the end of the day, we've got to have a fine balance in not making, we don't want to create a homeless problem by special assessments being put in place because of, people who, I get it. It's, hey, we're good stewards of our money. We're not going to we're going to have our HOA fees very low. And then 20 years later, you don't have anything in reserves, and you do these studies and it says, okay, you guys got to go spend $1 million. And everybody on the HOA goes, oh God, why didn't the president 10 years ago think about this? Or why didn't, hindsight's always 20/20. It's easy to look back and say, why didn't we do it differently? But it's definitely the unintended consequence of what I thought they probably thought were good intentions back in the day.
Well, is there any way they can put like a mechanics lien? And I say this looking, I understand the dilemma in some cases. You have older people there, they spend all their money and they live in this condo, but the fact is their condo, may have increased in value 2 or 3 times what they paid for it. So there's a lot of unrealized gain on that, and I don't think they should be forced to sell it. Okay, that's not where I'm going with this. But there should be a mechanism to say, all right, we need to assess you $40,000, but we're gonna put that in an account and we're gonna put a lien on your apartment that you don't have to pay it, but no tax penalty. But when you sell your apartment and eventually it'll get sold, this lien gets paid first.
Yeah, kind of
something like that. It's
revenue certificate kind of thing. Yeah, no, that's a good idea, and I'm sure those options are being discussed. There was the guy out of South Florida I talked to a few weeks back was like, maybe we ought to create like a condo cap fund that these HOAs can go borrow the money at a low percentage rate from the state and put
and take 100 years to pay it back, because I want to be in a condo someday.
They never will pay it back.
You could find an investment. You could bring private investment into something like that. If you packaged it correctly and made it tax free, obviously, and all that
John,
kind of stuff.
Are you running for office now? I think you might be.
No, I'm trying to find practical.
Griff
I'm trying to find practical
it's
solutions here to this stuff, and
it's a great idea. Representative Rizzo and Representative Lopez and Representative Porras, they're the kind of the Miami delegation, part of the Miami delegation. This is very much in their wheelhouse. They were part of in the last session, they drafted a bunch of HOA laws, and they are trying to come up with common sense solutions. They're talking to staff in Tallahassee all the time about bringing some sort of common sense practical solutions to it. The problem is, if we don't get called back for a special session, it's going to be a while till this gets solved, and that's going to be another year or two of these problems that these condo owners are facing, especially if they're hitting those benchmarks.
I don't think they're going to let you wait on that, because talking to the realtors, the market's being flooded with condos because people can't afford them, and it's going to break the back of Florida if we don't come up with the solution.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised that we haven't been called back, but now to be called back for a special session, you got to have the speaker, the president, and the governor all kind of singing from the same hymnal. And right now, I don't know that anybody's singing from the same hymnal except the governor. The speaker has been very quiet on the subject, and the president of the Senate, her memo basically was like, I sympathize, but we're not coming back.
And are you talking, who's the speaker now? Is it Ben Albrighton?
It's still Pasadena.
Oh, still her?
Pasadena's still the president, and Renner's still the speaker until November. And you've got to get those guys energized to make the call. The governor, I think, would say, yeah, let's do it. But he's got to have those two other leaders in a position to say, yeah. And they might be cooking legislation as we talk. Special sessions are done long before they call us back to vote. When we get there, most of the legislation has been crafted and created weeks in advance of us arriving. And then when we arrive, we get to dissect it and go through it, and then we'll have a committee hearing, and then we'll go to the House for a vote. But in most cases, it's already done. And maybe that's going on behind the scenes right now to try to figure this out. But based on her memo from 3 weeks ago or whatever, it seems pretty certain that she had no interest in going back.
Is it because she's out the door that she doesn't,
Well, she's really not. She's got 2 more years left on her term. She's going to come back and serve for 2 more years after being president. There's going to be 3 Senate presidents on the floor next year. You're going to have Senate President Albritton. You're going to have former Senate President Pasadomo, who's currently the president, and then you're going to have former Senate President Don Gates. So you're going to have 3 Senate presidents on the floor next year.
Oh gosh, the floor is going to explode. It's going to be a lot.
Let me tell you, there might not be enough room on that floor for all of them.
So Griff, what about this Amendment 6, the campaign finance, repeals public election financing? I when we read about it in this James Madison Institute little info book, I was just shocked that we're paying for people. The governor, I guess. I was like, what?
I think that's just. I feel like it's just antiquated. That's just something I feel like that was put in place so many years ago. I mean, as a guy who's had to go out and ask for money and raise money, Tallahassee never gave me $1. DC never gave me $1. I don't know why we feel like we listen, we have a $117 billion budget in the state, I think, right? We're the 14th largest GDP in the world. We have a balanced budget. We have a governor who vetoed $1 billion off the budget real quickly. We're very conservative. Why in the heck are we using taxpayer dollars to go fund campaigns?
Well, it's funny because I didn't know about it till I read about it, and I was like, "Yeah, why are we doing that? Especially these top tier people, they're able to bring money in."
Well, that's part of that.
Do you think Governor DeSantis needs us? Yeah.
No.
Exactly. DeSantis doesn't need us for money. That guy can raise money in his sleep. This is not a. It's crazy. There's so much money involved in campaigns. They're raising money hand over fist. There's the House Republican campaigns. There's the Senate Republican campaigns. There's House Democratic, Senate Democratic. And these are strong, affiliated people who go out and all they do 24/7, 365 is raise money for campaigns. And so, like for myself, who has a campaign, or I'm on the ballot in November, House campaigns are at my disposal. I can call them and say, I need help. Can you send me 100 walkers or whatever? And they will do everything they can to help me. Now, granted, I'm blessed because of where I live, and I'm in a plus 42 district, I think, or something like that. But there are campaigns down south where Orlando and Miami area where the House campaigns will spend $1 million or more on an individual candidate to make sure they win that seat. So there's no trouble raising money in the state of Florida. They've got plenty. They spend plenty. I don't know why we would use.
Well, we see that with the pot amendment. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So Griff, do you think we'll ever see any reform to the PACs in Florida? I mean, I keep telling people. Yeah. I keep telling people that it's a scandal. It's a scandal waiting to happen, and it's going to destroy Republican control of Florida when it does happen. But
you're probably right. There's a with every campaign law or every law even that we pass out of Tallahassee, there's some guy sitting over there in a cubicle that's going to find the loophole. And the campaign finance, the PC accounts, the dark money, the soft money, as we like to call it, is very prevalent, very, very prevalent. And if used correctly, it can be a very good advocate for the candidate and helping, other candidates around the state. You go support people in the party to make sure they get elected. You can go write checks to them and those sorts of things. But if you're just using it to live, there's a lot of people who use it to live out of,
Right. Retirement fund.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. There's people who've been out of office for many, many years that are still sitting on millions of dollars in PC funds, maybe, in some cases just waiting on revenge. You know what I mean? Waiting for a certain person to stick their nose out, and then they're like, all right, I got this $2 million.
Well, we saw that with Gates. McCarthy spent $3 million trying to oust him. And I was ticked off about that, Griff.
If you wait to see if Matt Gaetz runs for governor, how much McCarthy dumps into the state. he'll dump $100 million to try to beat him.
So any rumblings on that? And then how has it been now that DeSantis is back in the saddle, concentrating on being our governor? I mean, he was able to do it all, honestly.
Yeah, he was fine. I think the governor's race will be very, very interesting. I think you're going to have probably all the cabinet members. You'll have Simpson, Moody, and Petronas, likely to have Byron Donalds and Matt Gaetz, maybe Lieutenant Governor Nunes, who, obviously would probably be a consideration. You got a wide range of folks. Casey DeSantis, you never know who might jump in this race. And then maybe Senator Rubio wants to come be our governor or something. I don't know. There's all kinds of possibilities.
I think Rubio's going to end up in Trump's cabinet somewhere with
that
so
quiet
position.
Lately.
Yeah. And so you talk about that, John. That's a great point. So if you were to go, say Rubio gets tapped to be Secretary of State, which would be fantastic. Like I'm a huge Marco Rubio fan. I think he's one of the brightest guys we have up there. And so then you have a vacancy in the Senate, right? Well, so remember our good friend and flip-flopper of the year, Charlie Crist, appointed his chief of staff to fill a spot for a year so that then he could go run for Senate. So maybe our governor says, you know what, I'm going to appoint somebody to be a placeholder, then I'm going to go run for the Senate.
I'm going to say Petronas.
There's just so many variables there.
This is fun. This is like when you buy a lotto ticket. You start fantasizing about what you do with it.
Right. But if you have 5 or 6 people in a primary, the 20% or the 21% will be your nominee and likely to win the governor of Florida. And let's face it, if our president, if President Trump wins in November, whoever he taps, whoever he puts his hand on and says, this is our guy for governor, is most likely going to be governor. And right now, I think all those people are trying to hitch their saddle to him.
Even though Gaetz has said multiple times he's not going to do it, you think he might?
Whatever.
Politics. I don't believe politics.
Okay, I'm always the naive one.
Why would his dad come back to Tallahassee to run if his son wasn't serious about being a governor? I mean,
okay, we're breaking news with Griff. I'm happy because I have to say, Congressman Gaetz is a fighter. He's always a fighter. You see him everywhere, and he represents Florida, and he's working hard on behalf of Americans. And I get beat up all the time on X with the haters, but I like what he's doing.
Yeah.
So
haters, the keyboard warriors of the world are plentiful, aren't they? It's the ones that will really come up and talk to you that are that's the few and far between. The keyboard warriors of the world.
What do we have to look forward to in this November session that you're going to help lead the way with, Griff?
There's going to be a lot of stuff. I think you're still going to have a lot of comments on insurance.
Okay.
While the market has gotten a little bit better, it's maybe stabilized a bit. It's not near what it needs to be. We've got a handful of new companies that are joining the market, and Citizens is trying to sell off some of their inventory. But we have to make sure that that's a priority to fix that, to make folks like when John gets a 100% increase that his agent can say, hey, John, we got 2 or 3 options, right? I mean, because that's really the case. You want your agent to be able to say, hey, here's my tool chest, and I got 3 or 4 things to pick out of. You can pick the Pinto or you can pick the Lamborghini, but just pick one.
I'm picking the Lambo.
So you'll see a lot of, you want to be overinsured, I'm just telling you.
Right.
And I think you'll see a lot of other things. There's a lot of discussion here locally with our superintendent about truancy. We have a really bad truancy problem. Yeah, so we're gonna work on some stuff there about maybe possibly, tightening the belt a little bit on some of the truancy laws and the truancy courts. It's kind of I don't know that it'll go anywhere, but one of my pet peeves, and I hear this from my friends who have kids that are graduating college who can't get into medical schools in the state of Florida, who graduate from University of Florida or any of the state universities or even private universities with all the credentials, but simply can't even get interviews because they're not out of state or they're not out of country.
That's ridiculous.
And while, it's ridiculous. And there are certain states like North Carolina being one that they have, you're required. I mean, why we're using taxpayer money? Higher ed is the third largest budget in the state. We're using all that taxpayer money to fund all these state educational institutions, and yet we're telling our locals, our in-state people, you're not good enough for us. That's a travesty to me. I think it's wrong.
Well, and UF's a top-tier school, so.
But is the issue, Griff, that the out-of-state tuition, particularly from the foreign students and stuff, they're paying the full boat? Is that a financial incentive?
Well, and I want to comment on that too, Griff, because
to bring in more outsiders than state
and that's
residents.
part of it, because one of my friend's sons went to a top-tier private school down in Tampa, Jesuit, and top of his class, waitlisted to FSU. Waitlisted.
Yeah.
And what they learned was last year's class of FSU, like 50% were first time American from foreign families getting in, and I was like, what the heck? And that he was not the only kid. I've heard this from multiple people now.
Oh no, I hear this from my girls are in their 20s now, like yours, Veronica. They're out of the school, but I've still got tons of friends that are going through the process, and getting into college is hard enough. And when I would
take
never,
top kids. I was shocked.
I would have never gotten into college based on my high school career. Like I was just the regular old kid and got into FSU just because because it's what you did. But today, based on, like you say, a guy going to Jesuit who's probably got a 4 point whatever.
He's at University of Miami right now, but I'm like, what the heck? A top tier kid cannot get in. But it was just more than him too. So I don't understand this, Griff.
I hear it all the time, and that's some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. I don't know if it'll gain traction because
let me know, because I know the parents that are angry about it.
Well, I know a physician out of Jacksonville whose son graduated from Florida with a 4.4 or something biomedical sciences degree and could not get an interview at a medical school in the state of Florida, but yet the Air Force will take him and pay for it 100% to put him through med school.
That's wonderful.
So what are we doing? Like that's a disservice that we are but we're not taking. I know two people in particular that grew up with my oldest daughter who wanted to be physicians, graduated from the University of Florida, and could not get into medical schools, so they went to PA schools. Now they're both PAs. Yeah. Now, are we discounting? They're awesome. They're great. They're really good at what they do. But could they have been doctors had Florida State or Miami or Florida or whoever?
You need to help massage that, because we want to keep our Floridians that are sharp within Florida too. So that's the other part of that.
Yeah, that's the other part. You're shooting yourself in the foot down the road, because you're taking people that live in Florida that want to stay in Florida and sending them somewhere else.
That's why TMH is building that facility in conjunction with St. Joe on the beach. Yep. It's some sort of ridiculous statistic. 60% or something of doctors where they train, they end up staying. And so they're hoping, as the medical school is a feeder to this physician's, this clinic out on the beach, we'll have these, medical care in Bay County will go up, because we have these young, bright physicians who come here and say, my God, this is a beautiful place in the world. Let's stay.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of battles up there. Is there anything else we're missing?
We need that. And we need that because we've got so many older physicians in Bay County, are retiring.
A lot that are retiring.
Oh, yeah.
They're not being replaced.
Our healthcare since Hurricane Michael, we know it's been a struggle, and we have to leave Bay County for quality healthcare, for high-end specialty healthcare, right? If you have cancer, you tip most people.
I go to the Mayo. That's right.
That's right. You go to Mayo, you go to MD Anderson, you go to Moffitt, wherever you go based on the specialty. And hopefully one day we will be able to have that here where you don't have to leave.
Right. That's
be nice.
That's the goal. But
well,
there's a lot going on in Tallahassee. We'll be very busy, but we're excited.
Well,
got to get elected first, though, so don't forget to vote.
That is not going to be a problem. Oh, my gosh. No. Representative Griff Griiffitts, well, it's always a pleasure, and you always tell us what's happening. And I will share this with the entire world. And it's been such a pleasure having you on. And I know you're going to be fighting hard for Floridians.
Always. Especially District 6 and our people up here. We'll do our best to take care of my folks at home.
Well, thanks for joining Veronica Live.
Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.